The Chicago Bulls got the news yesterday that they've been waiting for. The disabled player exception was approved. Now, how are the Bulls planning to use that? We'll talk about a little bit on that on today's episode. We'll also talk about my thoughts coming out of Summer League, the Bulls salary cap situation, and diving into the mailbag. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Hayes. You guys can follow the channel right off the top at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. But let's go ahead and get into the content for today. So I dropped an emergency video yesterday after the disabled player exception was approved. Went over things a little bit, but I want to get into a little bit more detail on it on today's episode before we jump into other things. So yes, the disabled player exception was approved for the Chicago Bulls, which allows them to acquire any free agent that's out there. And so basically what they can do is they can give a 1-year deal to any free agent, anybody who clears waivers, anything like that, up to $10.2 million. Now, that does not mean that the Bulls can split it up between multiple players. It's not like a mid-level exception. I got one of those questions in the comments yesterday. No, the Bulls cannot split up this exception between other players. It has to be just one player. It's one acquisition that the Bulls can make on it. They can trade for a player in the last year of their deal. They have to only have 1 year left on that deal. That does not include even if they have a partial or non-guaranteed second part of that deal. So they have to be in the actual last year of their contract. Now, as far as restricted free agents, the Bulls cannot acquire a restricted free agent like P.J. Washington, because a lot of you guys are asking that as well, with this type of exception, because restricted free agents have to be offered at least a 2-year deal. Now, the second year can be an option, basically making it a 1-year deal, but with this exception, the Bulls cannot even offer that. So it would have to be, right? Not an option. It would have to be a non-restricted free agent. So restricted free agents like P.J. Washington, it's not happening. So I know a lot of guys asked about P.J. Washington potentially being that. It does not allow for that. But there are players that the Bulls can, go out and acquire. We'll talk about that here in a second. So right now, the Bulls salary cap situation is this. Regardless of the disabled player exception or not, they're hard capped at $72.3 million. That's below the luxury tax. With Ayo Dosunmu, right, because his qualifying offer cannot be rescinded now, with the Ayo Dosunmu's, qualifying offer and 2 vet minimum contracts, the Bulls are roughly going to be at $165.3 million. What does that mean? That means that the Bulls have less than $8 million that they can use of that. So now if Ayo Dosunmu goes somewhere else, of course that changes some things. The Bulls can decide to carry only 14 players on the roster. Now that is going to eliminate as well one of their 2-way contracts. So the Bulls have some options at their disposal. It's still going to take AK being smart about what he's doing, but right now, the Bulls, they got to figure some things out, right? It's not going to be as easy and as straightforward as what some fans are thinking. $72 million, $172.3 million is what we're hard capped at. With Ayo Dosunmu again and 2 vet minimum players, that puts us at 165.3. So, we'll end up seeing what the Bulls have. They also can come off Carlik Jones' contract. He's not been fully guaranteed yet. They have until October 16th to decide on Carlik Jones, so that could free some things up. And ultimately, the Bulls do need some forward depth. We have tons of guards on this roster. It doesn't mean that the Bulls may not look at a guard or maybe a 2/3 or something like that, but we're very guard heavy. So when you look at some of the forward depth that's out there, of course, Kelly Oubre Jr. is one that absolutely the Bulls could look to try to acquire. You also have Markieff Morris, Christian Wood, Trendon Watford, who a lot of people have brought up. I really do like him. And then you also have our own free agents in Derrick Jones Jr. and Javonte Green, who we really haven't heard much about getting offers or even visiting or meeting with other teams at all. What I think is the most likely scenario, in my opinion, is that the Bulls, depending on what happens with Ayo's probably going to be back, and I think he should be back. I know a lot of Bulls fans, are ready to come up off Ayo, but I think more than likely he's probably going to come back on that qualifying offer. I do think the Bulls are going to eventually probably probably non-guaranteed, probably come off Carlik Jones' deal. I wouldn't mind at all if they, bring in Javon Freeman-Liberty on a training camp deal and kind of let him and Carlik kind of battle it out for that last guard spot. But overall, the Bulls are probably going to use that disabled player exception. If they use it, to acquire somebody, and then it's probably going to be one of our own free agents. I will not be surprised if one of Javonte Green or Derrick Jones Jr. are back on this roster on a vet minimum contract, right? Just to kind of fill out the back end of the bench, which the Bulls do need some help on the back end of that bench, especially, for injuries to kind of go into that type of thing if anything happens. But, that's where we sit right now. And so I know a lot of people are thinking and hoping that this means a huge acquisition is coming, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. Now, it could also mean that Arnulap Bitum is maybe what they are going to bring over, right? Maybe the Bulls look at him as somebody like, even though it was initially rumored to be a two-way contract, maybe they look at it to be something. But again, those rumors have kind of died down. Everywhere else still hasn't reported as being a Bull. There's like overseas outlets haven't reported as coming to the Chicago Bulls. His Wikipedia page hasn't been the Chicago Bull. Somebody mentioned on Twitter yesterday how he was working out with the Rockets. It seemed like that was a non-sanctioned workout, so it wasn't like he was officially training with the Rockets. They were kind of just shooting around and having some fun there. So Bitum is stateside, so whatever that means, you can take that for what you want. But right now, we don't know, right? Nothing's necessarily guaranteeing he's going to be an acquisition by the Bulls either. So kind of everything's up in air right now when it comes to the Chicago Bulls and what they do. AK hopefully has a plan. Hopefully, knows already what he's going to do. I wouldn't be surprised if even maybe in the next, 24 hours or so, we kind of get the last few deals with the Chicago Bulls. I do think that there are some free agents as well, waiting to see what happens with this Dame Lillard thing, because if Dame does go to the Miami Heat, best believe there are going to be some free agents, maybe even our own, and like a Derrick Jones Jr. or something, that are willing to take the vet minimum to go there and try to win a ring. Maybe go back out to rehab their value, go back out to free agency the year later. Maybe at that point there'll be players that are either part of a championship team or part of a championship run and can get paid that way. So I do think that those things are kind of around the NBA as well that players are waiting on. But I would not be surprised if the Bulls kind of make their next set of moves and kind of tell us where they're going to go sooner rather than later. Also, they may be, waiting on see what Io's going to do. If Io's just going to sign that 1-year qualifying offer, which him and PJ Washington may do, you just never know. So we'll end up seeing. AK's had a very smart offseason, right? That's the way that it hasn't been active. Too overly active. It hasn't been, the big type moves that people were buying on. Really, when you look at it, AK, considering that, yes, they were going to run it back because we've already talked about it. Vooch would have walked. We would have been in a way worse situation. They had to bring Vooch back. I like that they brought Kobe back at a value worth less than the mid-level exception. But considering that those things were foregone conclusions, which I have been telling you guys for a couple of months, AK's been very smart about the way he's gone over offseason. Acquiring Julian Phillips, a player with a lot of high upside, right? Then locking him in to a 4-year rookie deal, so we're not back in this situation that we're with Ayo anytime soon, right? Doing those type of things. Getting Vooch and Kobe at team-friendly deals. Going out and getting 2 veterans that both have a huge number of playoff experience, probably the most playoff experience other than DeMar DeRozan now on the team, right? And Javon Carter and Torrey Craig that both bring shooting and the defense that we need as well. AK's been very smart this offseason. Again, I use that word very intentionally. It's been a very smart offseason for Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. Not as many as the big moves that some Bulls fans would have wanted to see, but have been very smart and calculated in what he's gone about. And I think it's going to be the same with this disabled player exception, right? But so we'll end up seeing, you guys know, news drops, I drop. So anytime something happens, you'll get a video from me shortly thereafter recapping what went down. But outside of that, right, let's get back into, kind of the topics for today and Summer League, right? I want to kind of give my thoughts on Summer League. So one thing, with Dalen Terry struggling from shooting, if the Bulls are looking at a bench scoring being a need, especially if Kobe White ends up being the starting point guard. If he's coming off the bench, this can kind of go away some. But the Bulls may look to add some wing depth with Dalen Terry struggling shooting. Now, I've said this before, and it doesn't change it. Dalen Terry, if he is given a role with the Chicago Bulls, scoring and shooting is not going to be even probably the top 5 things he's going to be asked to do right away when he's getting minutes for the Bulls. The things that he's going to be asked to do, he's done pretty well, right? As far as, defense, getting steals, getting out in transition, passing in transition has been really good for him as well. Those type of things, the energy plays, those things he's done well, even in Summer League. But with that said, if the Bulls do look at and say we may need a little bit of scoring here coming off the bench, they may look to add some wing depth and a scorer there, which whether it's a Terrence Ross or it's a Kelly Oubre Jr., if they're willing, he can come at less money, considering it doesn't really seem to be a market for him, they may look to do something like that. I don't necessarily think that's for a for sure thing, but it is something that they could look towards depending on how AK views the needs on this roster. Now, as far as Javon Freeman-Liberty, who was the star of Summer League for the Chicago Bulls over the course of their 4 games, Javon Freeman-Liberty deserves, at the very minimum, a training camp invite and the right to take that spot from Carlik Jones, if Carlik even still has it at that point. Javon Freeman-Liberty has absolutely earned that. And if by some stretch that Ayo Dosunmu does sign with another team and we don't match and he goes to another team, Javon Freeman-Liberty needs to be the first one up to replace him, right? I'm not saying don't sign Ayo to bring in Javon Freeman-Liberty, but I am saying that he's definitely earned that shot and that opportunity. The best player over the course of Summer League, 50% shooting overall throughout those 4 games, yes. Summer League is not the NBA. That level of competition isn't even close. But I think the skill set that he showed, and while we'll talk about maybe a need for bench scoring, Javon Freeman-Liberty has shown enough to say, hey, maybe he can serve that role for the Chicago Bulls. So let me know what you guys think on that. Now, Julian Phillips, he's raw, but showed a lot of promise. I like the potential of Julian Phillips even more than what I did coming into it. He's at least proven, at least somewhat, that the concerns over his shot were maybe a little bit overblown, and he's shown that there's enough reason to think and believe he's going to be able to turn that shot around. Get him working with Peter Patton, get him working down there and developing. I think that maybe not in year 1, but I think a year or a season or so from now, getting a full season of working out, being in an NBA training room, another offseason. Don't be surprised if that 3-point shot ends up being a weapon in his arsenal that wasn't initially thought, right? The Bulls locking him up on a 4-year deal, a little under $6 million guaranteed, I think also signifies that they are going to believe in his potential and be invested in it for the foreseeable future. And I really like Julian Phillips and his promise. The Bulls could have gotten some quality depth there at that in the second round. And then, that's special. So we'll see what that happens. And then Sanago. Adama Sanago absolutely is going to benefit from a year in the G League. I think that we've seen in the Summer League, his ability right away is going to be rebounding both offensively and defensively, but then getting those putbacks, right? His shot, I don't know if it's ever going to be quick enough for him to really get his shot off in the NBA as far as that jump shot. It's extremely slow, especially the 3-point shooting. But if he is left wide open, if he's caught open on a mismatch or something and he's wide open in the mid-range of the 3-pointer, hey, he's going to probably be able to knock that down because he'll have enough time at that point. But I think he's going to benefit greatly from being at least a year in the G League with how, not necessarily raw he is, but just how he has to acclimate to the speed of the game. So I think those things are going to help him as well. But overall, Summer League, a lot of positives come out of Summer League. Again, in the perspective of what Summer League is, right? Nobody is saying, at least not me, that those skills are going to translate 1-for-1 at the NBA level. But Summer League is to see kind of what you have, right? And what you need to work on to going into, G League season and things like that for some of these players. And, players like Nate Darling, who some people try to compare from, he's not ready for the NBA. He may be in our G League system. I hope to see him there. Henry Drell, I hope to see there as well. Jonte Porter, I wouldn't mind. And as you guys know, I'm planning on doing G League update episodes once a week. We're playing highlights, going over games and things that happen in the G League. I'll definitely be watching those guys closely and giving you kind of updates on their progress and how they're working out in the G League as well. But all right, we got one voicemail that I want to get into before we leave today, and this one is from JTA.
Hey, what's up, Hayes? This is JT. Hey, so I wanted to send this voicemail in because I don't know if it's true, but I was listening to Shabu's podcast, and I think it was Bobby that was saying that P. Will allegedly went up to the front office and told, I guess, AK and Mark Eversley that he want to play the wing. And so this is my thoughts on it. I'm a big fan of Patrick Williams. I always felt like he should play the 3. I mean, he could play the 4, but I just feel like he a natural, like, point forward. It's just that Billy Donovan, for whatever reason, don't want to do that. And I think that in the long run, that's going to hurt us because I think we could find some success with it because, especially when, like, DeMar leaves and we still got Zach. Zach will just play off the ball. But I was thinking about Justin Phillips and Julian Phillips, our new draft pick. And I was thinking, let's just say we trade DeMar. I think that, okay, they brought in Justin Phillips. We already know, like, P. Will is part of our future. And me personally, I think that the future of the team should be like this. I think that instead of putting Patrick Williams at the 4, they should let Julian Phillips play the 4 and let Patrick Williams play on the wing like he asked because he get a chance to handle the ball, he could pass the ball. You know, he could obviously statistically our best 3-point shooter, and he got good defense. So I don't know. I just think that that'd be good, especially if we got like 2 big wings. I mean, even though one is playing the 4 and Julian Phillips, but that's just me. I think eventually we're gonna have to trade DeMar. I think the writing is on the wall, in my opinion. That's just me. Only because like we know like the ceiling for this team, like they big 3 is like super small. It's like this year. And I think it's done. And if we struggling, I think you gonna look up and somebody gonna be gone. I just don't think that DeMar is the piece to go forward with because he's about to be 35 and he don't fit our timeline. So, and his contract expiring. So, I don't know. I just, let me know what you think. P. Will at the 3, just Julian Phillips at the 4, and then we just, see where the chips may fall. Let me know what you think, Hayes.
All right, and so I know it's a common thing to say, P. Will back at the 3, P. Will back at the 3, P. Will back at the 3. And I need people to really go back and look at where, how, and the spots that P. Will was used at when he did play 3 his rookie season to now. It's the exact same. P. Will is fine at power forward. He has the size, the strength, and the wingspan to play power forward in this league. I'm not somebody who is like, oh, it's simple. Let's move P. Will back to the 3 and that unlocks something. Until P. Will unlocks what's in between his ears, it doesn't matter what position you can put him in. You can put him at the 3, you can put him at the 4, you can put him at in the middle of the court playing, doing the Jesus pose. It don't matter. Nothing is going to help him until he ultimately unlocks some aggression. And P. Will is fine at the 4. He's absolutely fine at the 4. Moving P. Will to the wing actually exposes some of his weaknesses even more. P. Will is not laterally quick at all. Now, he can, like many other players have learned, to use their length to overcome a lack of lateral quickness, but some of the faster threes in the league, the quicker threes, would absolutely give P. Will fits. And because P. Will hasn't been an offensive weapon for us as of yet, shooting the 3-point shots become one for him. But I think it negates a lot of his overall pluses putting him at the 3. I understand why that mindset's there. I really do think a lot of fans as well just hold on to the thought process of him being the 3 because that was his first position when he came in. But P. Will is not like the modern NBA is going to things different. Yes, there are some still traditional size 4s and bigs and lineups, but how did that work for the Milwaukee Bucks last year? Like, I'm just saying, like, it depends on roster makeup. Now, there's absolutely a way that the roster can go that would make more sense for P. Will to play the 3, but I fight against the thought process of, oh, just move P. Will back to the 3, it fixes everything. It doesn't fix shit, really. Not in my opinion. Now, as far as Julian Phillips at the 4, I'm going to throw this in there. We also have Dalen Terry, and just about anything you can say about Dalen Terry, you can say about Julian Phillips as well, as far as like potential and things like that. They have a similar plan as far as potential. Now, I think that Dalen Terry doesn't have the offensive upside that Julian Phillips does, but there is a thing, like not every player that you draft is meant to be a starter, right? And some could say that, hey, that could apply for P. Will as well, but I'm just saying Julian Phillips absolutely could be the long-term 4, and that could be one of the things, especially if Julian Phillips 3 takes aim and ends up being a really good weapon for him, that could mean making it more sense of P. Will moving to the 3. One could say also Dalen Terry and his ascent could make more sense moving Dalen Terry to the 3 and then moving keeping Patrick Williams at the 4. I've always said this. One of the biggest benefits of Patrick Williams in general is he adds flexibility with how you can build out the rest of your roster, because you can use him at the 3 or use him at the 4. So depending on how the Bulls roster goes forward into the future, I think that's ultimately what's going to dictate what his long-term position is. Now, as far as him playing point forward, he can do that at the 4. Hell, we see players do it at the 5. So I don't really like point forward. I think could be a really good weapon for P. Will eventually with his playmaking ability. But it just has to come down to he still has to want it. And until P. Will realizes the way that he needs to play, the aggression and energy level that's going to need to be sustained, it almost doesn't matter what position you put him in. That's my opinion. Don't expect everyone to share that. You guys can let me know what you think on that one down below. But that is it. That's my time for today. Make sure you guys are following us at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag episode, which goes down tomorrow and Sunday, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related because of you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.